This week's parsha is double parsha, Matot-Masei, our first double parsha, I think, of the year. It's been a while for the potential for the possible double parshas that we can have. This is the first one in a while, and we're going to be focusing on Parshas Matos, the end of Parshas Matos, Perek Lamed Beis, chapter 32, pasuk Aleph, verse 1. Umikne Rav Haya Livnei Reuven v'Livnei Gad Atzma Ma'id. And the children, the tribes of Reuven and Gad, had lots of cattle. Vayiru es Eretz Yazer es Eretz Gilad, and they saw the lands of Yazer and the lands of Gilad. Minei hamakim ekay mikne, and behold, the place was a place for cattle. So at this point of time, the Jewish people have conquered what we would call present-day Jordan, the eastern side of the Jordan River, which were the lands that belonged to Sichon, the king Sichon, and the king Og. The Jewish people defeated them in war and conquered their land. Okay. And conquered their land. They conquered their land. So the Jewish people are now in this area on the eastern side of the Jordan River. And the Torah tells us that these two tribes, Reuven and Gad, had lots of cattle. More cattle than anybody else. A lot of cattle. And they saw this area, that this area was a prime area for raising cattle. So the children of Gad and the children of Reuven, meaning the tribes of Gad and Reuven, came. And they said to Moshe and to Elazar the Kohen and to the princes of the assembly, saying, These are all names of cities in that area on the eastern side of the Jordan River. The land that God had, that Hashem had smitten before the assembly of Israel, Eretz Miknahi, it is a land up for cattle. And your servants have cattle. When they said, if we have found favor in your eyes, that this land be given to your servants as an inheritance. Do not make us cross over the Jordan. So they were saying, we this is what we want. We like to be able to take our portion of land on this side of the river because it is the best for raising cattle. And this is where we want to take our portion. And Moshe said to the sons of Reuven and sons of Gad and Reuven, are your brethren going to go to war and you're going to remain here? Why are you swaying, or why are you discouraging the hearts of the Jewish people from crossing the land that God has given them? So did your ancestors when they sent them from Kadesh Barnea to see the land. Okay, so what's happening here is that they request, basically, don't take us into the land of Israel. Moshe says, they're going to fight and you're going to stay here? You're discouraging the Jewish people from crossing into the land of Israel, which we already know happened when we sent out the spies, and the spies discouraged the Jewish people from entering Eretz Yisrael, and they ended up remaining in the desert for a total of 40 years. And you're basically going to you're basically, by saying that we'll stay here and not go over the Jordan, you're going to bring about the same thing that happened before. So the eventual response from them was that, no, we're going to build places for our families and our cattle to be, and we're going to fight together with the rest of the Jewish people in the land of Canaan, in the land of Israel, and we're not going to come back until that job is done.
They want to stay not outside of Israel.
What?
They just want to.
They want to stay outside. They want to get their land. They want to live on the other side of the Jordan River.
It's not a land given Jewish people.
Let's wait and see. Okay? All right. I, on a basic level, yes. On a basic level, you're right. And Wednesday said to Moshe, "No, we will go ahead and fight with the rest of the Jewish people." Moshe said, "Okay, but you must keep this. You must fulfill this. If you don't fulfill this, then you're not keeping your part of the deal." Okay, so I want to share with you the thoughts of the Arachayim, commentary of the Arachayim, and the Arachayim has a few questions. One question basically is what Arkady just brought up. You know, Eretz Yisrael, the land promised to Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, was on the western side of the Jordan River. And here they are deciding that no, because we have a lot of cattle, we'll stay on this side. Seems a bit problematic that they would that they would go ahead and choose and give up the Holy Land for this kind of for their cattle. Moshe doesn't mention that to them. Moshe outright doesn't say to them, how do you give up Eretz Yisrael? That's not what Moshe outright says. The wording of Moshe's response to them is that, what do you think? You're going to stay here and everybody else is going to fight? When you do that, that's going to cause the Jewish people to decide, well, we're not going over either. Why should we have to go fight for Eretz Yisrael? We won't go over either. You're going to cause them to not want to go into Eretz Yisrael and repeat the sin of the spies. That's what Moshe says to them. Now, what's interesting is, what were they thinking? What were they thinking? Did they really think that it was okay for them to go ahead and just, this land has already been conquered. All right, we'll stay here, and everybody else, you go fight what you have to go fight for. I mean, this land that was conquered by the Jewish people now, everybody fought for that land. That wasn't just these tribes fought for it. Moshe led the Jewish people in conquering this area. It was conquered by all of Israel. And now these two tribes are saying, we'll take this land, we'll stay here, everybody else can go there. I mean, what were they thinking to think that's okay to say? Here's a land everybody fought for, they're going to take it, and then the rest of the land, they're going to stay here and everybody else has to deal with it? Like, what were they thinking? Good, Moshe points it out to them. They say, okay, but what were they thinking? So the Arachayim gives a very interesting explanation to answer these two questions. And the way we have to approach this is we have to go back to Pasuk Daled, verse 4, where the tribes of Reuben and Gad say, Ha'aretz asher hika Hashem lifnei adas Yisrael eretz miknehi. The land that God smote before the assembly of Israel is a land of cattle, land for raising cattle. There's a lot that lies in these words, the land that God smote before the assembly of Israel. The point that they're saying is that it is very obvious that our ability to conquer these lands, the lands of Sichon and Og on the eastern side of the Jordan River, it is very obvious that it's not we who defeated them, but it's God who smote them. There is no question that it was a miracle that we were able to conquer these lands. So Hashem made it very clear to us in this war that he is fighting our war. So now, the problem is, they were trying to preempt any some questions that would be asked. So the question that's being asked about them, which is, what are you thinking? You're just the land that was conquered everybody, you're gonna take and everybody else just gonna go there and fight? What are you thinking? That's not fair, that's not right. But their point is that it's like, what's the problem? It's obvious that these lands were conquered by God, not by us. It's obvious. So if anybody thinks that the reason that we're staying behind is because we don't want to fight, we're afraid to fight, that's clearly what people might think. If they're not going over to fight, they say, well, we're not going to fight because we want this land. Well, people are going to say, maybe that's just an excuse. Their response to that, their preempting that is to say, this is the land that Hashem smote. It is obvious that we were able to conquer this land by miracle. So, It's not about being afraid to go over. What's there to be afraid about? The same way that Hashem did miracles for us here, he'll do miracles for us there. And not only that, later on in Devarim, when Hashem speaks to this is later on in the book of Devarim, the pasuk reads, this is in Devarim Gimel, chapter 3, Chav Aleph, verse 21. There's Yoshua tzivei se'ba'esahi lemar. And I commanded Yeshua at that time, this is Moshe speaking. He says, I commanded Yeshua, I charged Yeshua, saying, Einecha ha'ra'is es kol asher asa Hashem Elokeichem. Your eyes have seen everything that Hashem your God did, l'shnei hamalachim ha'ela, to these two kings, to the two kings of Sichon and Og that we're referring to. Kein yasa Hashem l'cha mamlachas asher ato over shama. So to will Hashem do for all the kingdoms that you will pass into there. Which means that Moshe himself, when he was speaking to Yeshua and encouraging Yeshua, he said, you saw what Hashem did for Sichon and Og. That's what Hashem is going to do for you when it comes to the kings to the kingdoms of Canaan. So Gad and Reuben are saying these are the lands that God smote. It is obvious that Hashem miraculously gave us these lands, and therefore it's not about that we're afraid to go over. Nothing to be afraid of. And that's exactly what Moshe said to Yeshua. Look what Hashem did to Sichon and Og, and that's what He's going to do for the kings of Canaan. So their whole point is that if anybody thinks that we're not going over because of the fact that we're afraid, there's nothing to be afraid of. We're not afraid to go over. The same way Hashem conquered the land of Sichon and Og, Hashem will conquer the land of Canaan. And if it's a question of, it's not fair, you here, everybody fought for the land, and over there, you're not fighting with them. Their point is that there's nothing to make a big fuss about. It's the same way the Rabbeinu Shalom took care here, he's going to take care of there. There's nothing to worry about. They don't need us. This is all miracles, and these miracles will carry over into the land of Canaan. So that is what lies in what they were saying, the land that Hashem smote before the assembly of Israel. It is obvious that these lands, we took them miraculously. And those miracles will carry over into the land of Canaan. Hashem will continue doing those miracles. And therefore, there's no reason to think that we are not crossing because we're afraid. And there's nothing to worry about that we're not going to be there. Hashem will do miracles for the Jewish people, even if we're not there. So this was how they were trying to preempt one issue. I mean, the question was, what were they thinking? They're not going to go fight? That's not fair. And they're going to discourage people. The answer is, their whole point was that it's so obvious that miracles gave us the land that from here we can take, we know that the miracles will continue when we take Canaan. So it's not about us being afraid, and it's not that we're so needed. It's almost everything that was going on by the spies. They're saying, no, we see already here that the miracles will continue. Hashem is going to give us the land. Okay, that addresses one issue about what were they thinking about not going over and fighting the land of Israel. But what about the fact that you're giving up Eretz Yisrael, you're giving up the Holy Land? What were they thinking about? How were they dealing with that? So for this, the Arach Chaim goes into an interesting halachic discussion, and that he starts from the words of the Rambam. And Rambam, Maimonides, in the laws of Trumas, which is what we separate and give to a Kohen, he writes, Ha'eretz Yisrael ha'amura b'chol makom hi eretz shekavsha melech Yisrael einavi midas roiv Yisrael. Eretz Yisrael, even if it is the land delineated to Abraham, when Hashem promised Abraham the land of Israel. The land of Israel is only where you had a king of the Jewish people conquering it, or a prophet with the consent, with the knowledge of the majority of the Jewish people conquering. In order for Eretz Yisrael to be holy, you need it to be conquered by a king representing the Jewish people, or a prophet representing and dealing with the consent of the majority of the Jewish people. But if an individual, or if one tribe goes and on their own conquer a land which was promised to Abraham, but it wasn't done by a king or by the prophet representing the majority of the Jewish people, it's an individual, it's a tribe, that is not called Eretz Yisrael. So you see that in order to be Eretz Yisrael, it's necessary that it be conquered by the Jewish people. If it's not conquered by the Jewish people, it will not get the status of Eretz Yisrael. More, says the Rambam further, we know there were lands that King David conquered, and they did not get the status of the land of Israel, even though it was a king conquering them. Why? Why did those lands that King David conquered, why did they not have the status of the land of Israel? The problem is that even when the Jewish people conquered the land of Canaan under Yeshua, they never conquered it completely. Even after they conquered and divided up the land of Israel, there were still parts of Israel that the Canaanites lived in, which means that the process of conquering the land of Israel was not completed even by the days of King David. So King David, though, went and he actually expanded. He actually fought wars and conquered countries before he finished expelling the Canaanites from the land of Israel. Because of that, even though he was a king conquering land, that land did not get the status of Eretz Yisrael, because he had conquered them before he had gone ahead and finished expelling the Canaanites from Canaan. So therefore, and the Arachaim says that this is brought down in a medrash that if you're going to go ahead and conquer, it can become the land of Israel, but you've got to conquer all of Israel before you can conquer other lands.
It means the land of Israel, the people fighting for this land.
They have to conquer it.
But this statement, Hashem.
Wait a second. Hey, now.
What people should live in here?
No, but it was already conquered by everybody.
But this is before. What is the land the Hashem gave?
Hashem smote it. That means he gave us the ability to conquer it. At this point where they were, these lands were already conquered by the Jewish people. They fought a war with Sichon and they fought a war with Og, and they took their lands.
It means this is the land of Israel.
Okay, so that you're getting to the point. Okay, so now, therefore, what's happening here is says the Arachaim, Hadvar megidush shezulas tam hakadima kol shekabshua rev Yisrael den Eretz Yisrael yesh lo l'chol davar. What it seems here is what's being implied here is that the problem, for instance, by King David was the fact that the lands that he conquered were lands that were conquered before the whole land of Israel was conquered. But other than that, what would have been conquered would have been the land of Israel. And those were lands, David HaMelech's lands, those were lands that were outside your typical borders of the land of Israel. So even the land of Israel that was promised to Abraham needs to be conquered. And even lands beyond that are conquered could get the status of the land of Israel. V'hu maimer b'nei Gad b'nei Reuven, haaretz asher hi ka'Hashem l'pnei adas Yisrael. The Bnei Gad, the tribes of Gad and Reuven are saying the land that God smote before the assembly of Israel. Pirush eretz zu kedushas haaretz yesh la. This land has the sanctity of the land of Israel. Litam shekavshu l'pnei adas Yisrael. Because when it was conquered before the assembly of the Jewish people. The entire Jewish people were involved in it. The Kibush Rabim, Dina, Keretz Yisrael, L'chol Devareha. And what's called Kibush Rabim, what's called conquered by the many, by the public, meaning by the Jewish people, is considered Eretz Yisrael. So therefore, if there's a question, how could we not want to go into the holy land of Israel? This side also has holiness. Why? Because of the fact that we conquered it. And it wasn't an individual, it wasn't a tribe, it was the whole Jewish people. You'll ask a question. There's still a problem. The problem is that by King David, by David HaMelech, we said the lands that he conquered couldn't become like Eretz Yisrael because they were conquered before the whole land of Israel was conquered. And here also you have that. You have that now. Here, these lands are conquered before the land of Israel is conquered. That should be a problem. that should be a reason to undo what they're trying to say. This land is like has a sanctity of Israel, of Eretz Yisrael, because of the fact that the Jewish people conquered it. Yeah, but you can't do that if you're conquering the land before the land of Israel is conquered.
But let Israel is Canaan.
Right, the western side of the Jordan.
This is mentioned somewhere.
What do you mean?
How we know what is the land of Israel?
Actually, in this week's parsha, it's going to be delineated. But it's understood pretty much. It was always understood that they have to cross the Jordan to get into what would be the land of Israel. Again, land of Israel based on the borders told to Avram Avinu. Okay, we'll keep it simple like that. Now, all right. So we got a problem, right? Problem. The answer is, right. The answer is, as again, that lies in the words, the land that Hashem smote before the Jewish people. Hashem told us to conquer these lands. We didn't just do it on our own. Hashem told Moshe Rabbeinu, fight Sichon, take his land. Fight Og, take his land. So it's not out of order. Hashem told us to do this.
He didn't say David to do it.
No, David did it on his own. Exactly. Here Hashem told us to do it. It's not out of order. And more, if the whole point is how could you conquer more land before you actually deal with Eretz Yisrael proper? The whole reason they fought wars with Sichon and Og was because they wanted to cross through those lands to get to the land of Israel. And Sichon said, I'm not letting you go. And Og said, I'm not letting you go. So the whole war, which ended up in conquering those lands, was for the purpose of being able to conquer Eretz Yisrael. This was the way to go in. So again, it's not like how are you neglecting the land of Israel and going further and fighting? Not neglecting the land of Israel here. This was necessary to be able to take the land of Israel. So therefore, regarding the question of how are they giving up the Holy Land, the answer is we're not. It was conquered by the Jewish people as a whole. It's not a problem here that it's being conquered before the land of Canaan, and therefore, what's conquered has a status of the land of Israel. Okay, that was their argument. So now, what did Moshe Rabbeinu respond? And that's where we're only going to have time to deal with that. What did Moshe respond to them? When Moshe says, are your brothers going to go to war and you're going to stay here? Says the Arachayim. What Moshe said to the Jewish people was, you're right, that this war was a miracle. It was a miracle. But you know why this miracle took place? Because there was the merit of the entire Jewish people involved. The entire Jewish people fought for these lands. So you had the miracle was based on the fact that you had the merit of the entire Jewish people present in conquering it. As the Arachayim says, it's true, it's a miracle, but do you have to fight a war? You got to fight the war. It may have been a miracle that you won, but you have to fight the war. And the fact that we were successful there was that we merited that miracle in these lands is because it was the entire Jewish people together. You have the merit of the entire Jewish people. But if you're going to stay here, then then they'll be lacking the merit of the entire Jewish people. So you can't go ahead and say, well, what was there will continue here. What was there was because you have the entire Jewish people involved in the merit of the entire Jewish people. But if you stay here, you're not going to have that. That's number one. And number two is, why are you dissuading the hearts of the Jewish people? You're saying, look, we're not doing it because we're afraid. We're saying very clearly, we understand these were the miracles of Hashem, and there's nothing to be afraid of. But says Moshe Rabbeinu, at the end of the day, you got to be concerned that other people are going to say, yeah, sure, that's why you're saying there's nothing to be afraid of because of all the miracles. That's a cover-up for the fact that you don't want to go into that you're afraid. And that's an even greater problem because there's a history. There's a history of the Jewish people being afraid to go into the land of Israel. So even if you're trying to say that we're trying to make it clear and express that we're not afraid, it's not about being afraid. Hashem did miracles here, continue doing miracles there. You can't rely on that's not going to cause discouragement amongst the Jewish people. There's already a history of them being discouraged of going into the land, of being afraid to go into the land, and therefore making this request can cause the same thing. And what about the fact that, they're saying, this has the sanctity of Israel also? On that, Moshe said, those are the words that this lies in the words where it says, V'lama tzeniyu neslei b'nei Yisrael. Why are you dissuading the hearts of the Jewish people, me'avar la'aretz, from crossing over the land, asher nasan lem Hashem, that Hashem gave them? Those words, say the Arachayim, is coming to say it is true that the land conquered by the people has a status of Eretz Yisrael. Does it have the same status? Is holy? Is it as holy as Eretz Yisrael proper? No, it's not. The land promised to Abraham has a sanctity greater than the other lands. One example that he brings down from the Medrash is that in the land and the other side of the Jordan, it says Ein Ever Hayarden Roy Lebeis Hamikdash V'Lishchein Hashchina. That's the eastern side of the Jordan is not fit for having a Beis Hamikdash or for having the divine presence rest there. Meaning it's not the same level of sanctity. Yes, does it have sanctity? It has sanctity. Does it have the same level of sanctity? No, it doesn't. Why? Because this side of the Jordan was not promised to Abraham. The western side was, the eastern side wasn't. That's what it means. The land that Hashem gave to them. The land that Hashem gave to them refers to the promise that Hashem made to Abraham to give him the land of Israel. This side of the Jordan was not included in Hashem's promise. And therefore, even if you conquer it and it gets the status of Eretz Yisrael, it will not have the same level of sanctity.
What does it mean? No,
it's not the same.
No, but
it's not as holy.
Yerushalayim also more status holy.
Good, but the point is that Yerushalayim is higher than the rest. But the point is that the rest of the land is holy, and this other side of the Jordan is not as holy. There are certain, like I mentioned quickly what he brings down about you can never build a Beis Hamikdash on that side. You can never do that. But that's just one example. But the point being is that yes, it has the sanctity, which means will you separate Truma and Meiser from there? Will you have to tithe from the grain? Yes, you will. Yes, you will, because it's the land of Israel. But again, does it have the same level of sanctity? It does not. And therefore, Moshe wanted to point out to them also, when you're coming and saying the land that Hashem smote, and therefore there are no issues about that it doesn't have the sanctity, that it's not Eretz Yisrael. It is Eretz Yisrael. It has the holiness of Eretz Yisrael. Moshe said, yeah, but it's not as holy. It's not as holy.
To become holy.
But that's not the point. The point is that even that at the end of the day, when Eretz Yisrael is conquered and becomes holy, the other side of the Jordan will not be as holy.
But still
Period.
Land of Israel.
It is still the land of Israel, but it is, like you say, you have Yerushalayim as holier than the rest, and now you have the rest as holier than the other side of the Jordan. So this is how the Arachayim explains this, the back and forth between the tribes of Reuven and Moshe. Thank you for listening. Have a wonderful evening.
Thank you very much.
What's the definition?